Hi, welcome back to Franny's Square for part 2 of the Granny Square series. In part 1, I showed you how to make a granny square using the traditional method. If you haven't seen that video, I highly recommend taking a look at it, and I'll put a link to that video in the description below. Today, I'm going to show another method that will yield a squarer, flatter granny square. And then at the end, I'm going to discuss the pros and cons of using each method and why you might choose to use a certain method over another in particular projects. So grab your hook, grab your yarn, and let's get started. Okay, so we're going to start this granny square the same way we did with the traditional method, method 1. We'll start by making a magic circle. And if you need to see this more slowly, check out part 1 of the Granny series. Now we're going to chain 3. That counts as our first double crochet. And then double crochet 2 more times into the center of the circle. And that'll make our first 3 double crochet cluster. Then we're going to chain 2 and do 3 more double crochets into the center of the circle. Each chain 2 is going to create our corner in our first round. Okay, we'll chain 2 again, and then 3 more double crochet into the center of the circle. And again, if you need to see these stitches more slowly, either slow down your video or check out part 1 of the Granny Square series. And chain 2 again, and then our last 3 double crochet cluster into the center. And chain 2 for our last corner. Then we're going to take the end of the yarn and pull it tight, tightening the center of our square, and you can make it as tight or as loose as you like. And then we're going to slip stitch to the top of the first chain 3 that we made in the beginning of the circle. And then fasten off. And that's the end of round 1. Looks exactly like the one we made in the traditional method. Now, you can see this is the front side facing, the right side, because the stitches along the edge of the square are raised. If you turn it over, you'll see the stitches along the edge are flat. That's wrong side facing. So for method 2, what's going to change is we are going to crochet into the wrong side of round 1. Start with your next color, make a slip knot. Insert your hook into any corner of round 1, wrong side facing, and attach color 2. Now we're going to chain 3 to begin our first corner. And then 2 more double crochets into that same corner space. Chain 2. And then 3 more double crochets into that same corner space. And that will create our first corner. And what you'll see is that each round is actually crocheted the same way that it is in the traditional method. And what is differing is which side we are crocheting into. So now we chain 2 to get to the next corner and continue in the same pattern for the rest of the round. Okay, so here is the end of round 2, and you can see the raised stitches for round 1 are on the back side of the right side of round 2 because we flipped it over. So this is where it can get a little bit confusing because if you're going to weave your ends in at the end of each round, you need to know which is going to be the right side of your granny square from the start. Because the edge of the last round will be most prominent, I like to choose the side with the last round right side facing as the right side of my granny square. And to avoid all confusion, I suggest waiting to weave your ends in until you've completed the entire granny square. Okay, so that's round 2 finished. You can see the right side is with the wrong side of round 1 facing, and the other side will have the right side of round 1 facing. So now I'm going to begin round 3 with the wrong side of round 2 facing. I'll make my slip knot, and then I'll attach that into the corner of the square. Remember, round 2 wrong side facing. Then I'll chain 3, and that counts as my first double crochet, and I'll make the corner. So I'll do 2 more double crochets into the corner, that same corner there, and chain 2, and then 3 more double crochets, same way we always do the corners. Then I'll chain 2 to get over to the next space. Then I'll do 3 double crochets in the space, and chain 2 to the next corner, and continue in that same pattern all the way around to the end of round 3. Okay, so that is the end of round 3, and you can see I have the right side of round 3 with the wrong side of round 2. And I'll continue making more rounds by flipping my square each time I start a new round. Okay, so now I've completed all 6 rows of method 2, and as you can see, this produces a much squarer square and flatter square. So let's compare that to method 1, which is the traditional method of doing a granny square. And now you can really see the difference. As I said before, this starts to pinwheel. It kind of creates the wave going around, and this one is much squarer. Let's look at some of the other differences and the pros and cons of using each method. That way you can decide in a project which one you'd prefer to use. First of all, with the traditional method, the easy part of the traditional method is you are always crocheting with the right side facing. So you don't have to think about, oh, which side am I on? Do I need to flip it? And also, the right side of every single round will show. And if you look at that, the way you know the right side is showing is it has a raised edge in the front. You can see it on each round. And that gives a nice puffy or fluffy look, which I really like for winter items. I like them to look a little bulkier. If you look at this, every other round is right side facing. So since this was an even number of rounds, and we end on right side facing, all of my even rounds will be right side facing. All of my odd rounds will be wrong side facing. So my first round is wrong side facing. You see here it's not raised, and then here it is raised, and here it's not. Here it is, here it's not, and here it is. So that's why it yields a much flatter, smoother look. And I actually prefer that for summer garments because I think it looks lighter. So that might be a reason that I would choose that for a summer garment. Now, where you're doing this with right side facing every time, this you have to keep track of where you are and alternate each round, right side facing, wrong side facing. Also, on this method, I can weave in my tail ends at the end of each round. It's very easy. I always go into the wrong side, weave in my ends. On this method, I need to know where I'm going to end. If I'm ending on an even round like I did here, that means all of my even rows are right side facing. All of my odd rows are wrong side facing. in which case, if I wanted to weave at the end of each round, I'd have to keep track of that to know which side to weave my ends in. That's why for this type of method, I recommend waiting until you're finished with the entire square and then weave in the ends at the very end. So there you have it. Those are the two different methods and the pros and cons of each. We had the traditional method and the square or flatter method. I think we really need to name this so that we can refer to it more easily. So if you have a good idea for the name of this method, please drop it in the comments below. Also, if you have any questions about how to make the granny squares or about any of the things I did in this video or anything at all, please drop your questions in the comments below and I will make sure to get back to you. As always, thank you so much for joining me here at Franny's Square, and I look forward to seeing you soon.